Hey guys, Nugi here, and with today's video we're gonna have a little discussion. Today's video is gonna be about Demon Hunter's weaponry. One-handers versus two-handers, what are the better options and what should you pick in your build? So almost the entire day yesterday, because people came into my stream and they watched me play around with this. Right now I don't really have everything with the gems in it, but that doesn't matter for the explanation. I was running this in my build, my Manticore. It's my go-to pick whenever I use my cluster bomb build. And people look at it and they see, well, your Manticore has less DPS than your Natalia Slayer. So why would you pick the Manticore? Well, there's a few elements that go into this. If you look at the weapon range here, you can see that Natalia's have 1255 to 2134 average or damage, right? So every time you hit, it's gonna apply damage within that range. On my Manticore, however, it's 1956 to 2402. So the minimum damage roll you can get on the Manticore is almost the same, or it's close to the same as the maximum damage roll on the Natalia Slayer. That means that you have more consistent damage. As you can see, the range here in the two-hander is only 500 damage apart, where it's, how much is that? That's 900 damage apart on the Natalia Slayer, which is quite a lot. So it varies a lot on that one. Secondly, you want to look at what kind of build you're doing. The thing about one-handers versus two-handers is Spreadsheet DPS is in general going to be higher on one-handers. In general, I see around a 10% sheet DPS damage increase going on good one-handers or from good two-handers to one-handers. So I gain a 10% damage increase in general going for that one-hander. It increases a little bit more if I then go double one-hander. So I go two one-handers. It can increase a little bit more, but that's pretty much gear dependent if it's gonna do that or not. Whether or not double one-hander is gonna be better than one-hander and quiver is largely dependent on your crit. Okay, there we go. my camera was stealing a little of the spotlight. So whether or not you want to go double one-hander or double or one-hander quiver is going to be determined on your crit chance versus your crit damage. As you can see here, I would definitely benefit from going double one-hander with this, but since it averages out the average damage as well, it's not even a major deal. As you can see here, it's such a minor deal. I need a really good one-hander to measure up to the same kind of damage output I would get from my quiver. My quiver also gives me elite damage, it gives me health globes, it gives me resource cost reduction that I don't have on some of my other one-handers. If I got this one up, well, that would definitely help on the overall damage. You do have more attack speed though, if I recall correctly. Yeah, you do have more attack speed with the other setup, so that's something also to consider. And the reason why you want to consider these things is that, for instance, with a cluster arrow build, as you can see here, cost 40 hatred. It's a lot of damage for a high cost, right? So you shoot, you shoot, you shoot, you shoot, you shoot, you run out pretty quickly. That's something that's important to note here, because whenever you run out, you have to do something else. Then we could add in hungering arrow, but you look at the hungering arrow, 155 weapon damage as fire. It pierces, so let's assume this is like 250 weapon damage, right, on one target. This is 770 on the initial hit, and then 220 for an additional 4 grenades. That means that whenever you have to shoot this, you're missing an opportunity to shoot this. With some builds, what you can do is that if you go two-handers, you never have to use a generator, or you never have to use the multi-shot with suppressive fire, for instance, to regen. And there's a lot of other builds doing different things, but the key part here is that whenever you don't have to shoot a hungering arrow, and you can just shoot cluster arrow instead, your damage output is largely higher. Let's say in general you weave one of these, or you do one hungering arrow for every single cluster arrow you do. Let's say you do that. So you do this to keep enough, like to have enough damage or enough resources for your one-hand build, right? Where on your two-handed build you can be spamming this all day, nothing else. What that means is that here we have like a total of 1600 damage output versus the 250. So you have to put these two together and divide by 2, right? So put these two together, then we're down at around, I don't know, like 1000 weapon damage. Let's just assume 1000 weapon damage in general, right? That's the averaged out weapon damage. This, however, if you only shoot this, has 1650. So that's 1650 versus 1000. Is much more than 10%. So because of that, even though your spreadsheet DPS is telling you something else, you might actually do more damage. There are different abilities as well that will make two-handers better. Ambush, for instance, especially if you're solo. Because of the large hit, you bring them so much further down below 75 to the point where a lot of the time you one-shot. That's also something you want to consider. If, however, you do not use ambush, let's say you do not use ambush, you use Night Stalker instead, you have a very discipline heavy spec, you have more spammable skills where you never ever run into the instance where you have to sacrifice your generator anyways, like you don't have to sacrifice, or that you have another setup, like let's say you're using well, let's say you're using like chakrams or ball lightning, which is lower cost, and you can spam those indefinitely, even with a one-hander. Well, then you don't have to worry about the generator. So therefore, you can actually utilize the entire spreadsheet DPS, and in these builds, one-handers would probably be better. There's also something to consider, that is set bonuses. If you look at Natalia's, for instance, if you get the full set bonus, you get even more damage on top. As you can see here, I would gain quite a substantial amount of damage because of the 3 set bonus, plus again discipline. So if you need the discipline, and if you can really utilize the crit, well, again, super great. In my cluster build, I can't fit in the Natalia set because I have it will take too many resources from me, and it's occupying slots that I'm using other places. This is not my normal setup, by the way. So there's that. Also there's for instance, the Netta setup that gives you the infinite vault spam. So if you're looking for speed, well, now that's better. Cannon bolter can be very cool because of the spike trap, and then you lure them in. So there's utility there. Plus it's really good for the cluster again, to use spike trap plus cluster, and you like put down the spike, they all run to it because it taunts, and then you cluster on top. This can be very efficient as well. Then there's the quiver setups you can have with it. Instantly exploding bowlers. You cannot get this if you have one-handers. Then you can do Barisa plus that, and this can go up to 2. So you can have 3, like a bowler that's gonna hit 3 targets instantly if you line them up. That means like if you're doing bowlers with imminent doom, for instance, this normally has a 2-second delay. It's gonna be instant instead, and it can hit up to 3 targets. That's a lot of damage if you play it right. So now you actually have a generator that's worthwhile using, that's better for clearing up trash monsters maybe. And you might be only struggling on trash monsters. So you can never spend, like you would use that to never spend hatred while dealing with white monsters. Great as well. Then there's also a Calamity, which I haven't gotten yet, which adds the mark to everything. So if you can multi-shot everything, and then everything is marked, and then you take it down for the 20% extra damage. Natalis is probably the strongest bow right now out there for the majority of the specs. Then if you combine that with Natalia's and One Piece here and the Royal Ring of Grandeur, well, that's probably the highest DPS you will gain, the burstiest you can get. So for a lot of instances you just want burst. Other times you want sustainability, other times you want this and that. You can also go health trapper with, I know that I have a quiver, Bombardier's rucksack. Yeah, so you can place down 1,000,000 sentries. That could also be a build. So whether you're gonna go two-hander or one-hander depends on so many things. Do you have enough resources to use the one-hander? Is the one-hander's additional crit chance gonna give you more resources on the discipline side? Is that gonna increase your total amount of damage done? Something to consider. Are we gaining some special set bonuses from Natalia's and Danetta's? Are we gaining some legendary effect, drifting room, that's always on your strafe, so you're strafing all the time? Are we gaining some pierces plus quiver? There's also the hungering arrow with the additional pierce with the new buffs to hungering arrow as well. Your hungering arrow can actually do a lot of single target damage. Something to consider as well. So what I'm trying to get here is that in Diablo, weapons aren't as black as white and white as you would assume. The decision is not just straightforward every time. There's a lot of things you want to consider, and there's a lot of playstyle involved whenever you pick a weapon. So if you like a certain playstyle and if you feel that it's doing better than some other setup that people might suggest to you that you have tried already, don't let that discourage you for keeping on with your current setup. Of course, try out if they have good ideas, try them out. But if you really can feel that this fits your playstyle, sometimes that's just better. Even though the numbers might lie here on the spreadsheet, don't be fooled, because there's too much that goes into that you have to consider to just be tunnel visioning on light damage. Let me show you something here as well. Attack speed here versus the Manticore here. So if I was to do the Phantom Knives thing, where you do this, right? This is not limited by attack speed. So even though this says, well, this says less DPS than a two-hander, you're saying, okay, this two-hander has more DPS. That must be better for the Phantom Knives because it's already slow. But it's not, because you need to look at the damage here. The attack speed actually, for something like Phantom Knives, means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. It's only the weapon damage that matters, and that's pretty much equal here. Then we have resource cost reduction here. That matters because that means we can cast more of these before running out. So even on the two-hander side, it's not always easy to figure out what's better. So try out different weapons, figure out what you like the most. It's not black and white. All the weapons, or at least all these I have right here, and all the quivers, they have their place to be used, and they're all good in their own way. You just have to figure it out in the build that you're doing. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.